Welcome to another episode of Behind the Science. I'm your host, Quinn Smith. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Virgil Guran, our consulting scientist here at Bureau Veritas. Welcome, Virgil.
Hey Quinn, how's it going? Happy to be here.
Great. Listen, excited to have a chat with you today. We're going to break this down into three sections as we always do. First section is going to be get to know me. Second section is we're going to get down to a little bit of business, and we're going to end this off with some rapid fire questions and have some fun. Are you ready?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Right. Virgil, tell us a little bit about what you do at Bureau Veritas. You're pretty unique in the industry. And I think it's important for you to put some context around exactly where you've come from and where you are now.
Yeah, so my title is consulting scientist, which I guess when I first say it, the next natural question is, okay, what does that mean exactly? Sometimes it feels like a bit of a jack of all trades, but it's a subject matter expertise role and sort of like a technical guru, so to speak, on all the matters that pertain to environmental laboratory testing. But it's not only that. The intent is not to present someone with a lab coat. It's not that we don't put on lab coats and go in the labs. But the intent is really to marry the knowledge and understanding and expertise between what goes on in the field, so what our customers do on a daily basis, the practical component of it, in the environment, and then what happens in the lab. So you're sort of that middle person that has the knowledge and expertise of one side with the other, and then you kind of make heads and tails of it. My expertise in particular is site assessment, remediation, and water quality, which also includes environmental forensics. I have a background in consulting, so I've done a fair amount of field work. So this role was just a really good fit for me. As a consulting scientist, it's imperative that there's two components to it that are really important. One is you need to understand the customer's issues and pain points, and there's a big emphasis on understanding the theory, the practice of what goes on outside the lab before our services come into play. And the second one is to come up with solutions for those issues. In practical terms, I offer advice and guidance on things like sampling requirements, and sampling practices, suitability of testing options, so which of our services are best suited in which scenarios, interpretation of the results of the regulations, some training and education as well. And then there's a part of the consulting scientist responsibility that extends beyond the day-to-day projects and inquiries, and that's industry advocacy. So participating on advisory groups and working panels with regulators, offering input and advice. So that's the consulting scientist in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic too. This is a role that, when you came over to Bureau Veritas, you really built the role. It started out as a conceptual, an idea, a concept, and you really made it what it is today. So I mean, that's incredible, and I know it adds a lot of value to to our customers. I know you are in demand, and I think it's fantastic. It's something that definitely sets us apart. So congratulations, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk a little bit. I know, you're a proud scientist, but I know you're, more so you're a proud dad and a proud husband.
I am.
A little bit about you. And this past year, as you know, it's been challenging. And we're all responsible to keep our families safe and doing the right things. So tell me what's more challenging, determining the source of a hydrocarbon impacted site that's surrounded by 4 gas stations, or keeping your kids' screen viewing time down to a minimum?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it feels like everyone has learned the hard way how to seriously multitask this year. Honestly, from my perspective, the challenge seems to be fleeting moments. I mean, I keep reminding myself that there are those on the front lines that have it a lot harder than me, just being stuck at home, and they feel the pressure a lot more than me. But from my perspective, I find the challenge is not the individual task, but the balance of it. And it's been a work in progress for me. I think patience is the key. And by nature, I'm not typically a patient person. I like to get things done. I like the things to be out of the way. And so, yeah, when you're juggling work that has deadlines and you're juggling kids that just require attention, and sometimes they're bored. It's a tough one. Um, then again, everyone always seems to enjoy a young one popping in and out of a call,
Yes.
and always seems to put a smile on your face. So maybe in a way, we needed more smiles in otherwise stressful world. So it's not terrible.
So I think that's great perspective, Virgil, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think it is important. Patience is taught us a lot. It's taught us a lot about appreciating being with family, it's spending time with family, and slowing down a little bit. And you know,
Yep.
not just about getting things done. It's about the experiences with our family and our friends as much as we can be. I've learned very similar lessons, so happy to hear that you learned the same. I think it's also interesting. We've been working together for now about 8 years, I think.
Yep.
I just recently learned something about you that I'm sure was of great benefit to you during the pandemic. I understand that you're a winemaker.
Yes,
Okay, tell
I
me.
am. So, a chemist will always want to experiment, and making wine is kind of my little secret that I like to do kind of after hours. So that means I got to experiment on myself quite a bit. So I'm thoroughly enjoying that part. Winemaking for me has roots in the old country. My grandparents made it. My dad's been making wine for as long as I can remember. And at some point, it just felt cruel to just sneak a bottle from his stash here and there whenever I could. And so I just decided to start making it on my own. Not on my own. It's still more or less under his guidance and supervision. But it became sort of a yearly event um, where kind of the boys get together, crushing grapes, making a barbecue. So it's a tradition by now.
Oh, that's funny. So it's become a tradition. It's a family tradition.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. And like I said, probably quite beneficial during the pandemic and being on lockdown.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of a go-to whenever there's a bit of stress. Just pour a bottle of wine, and it kind of always seems to. That's kind of like cue for relaxing a little bit. So it's good.
Nice. Glad to hear it. Next, I think it's time to get down to business. Do you want to talk a little business?
Sure. Sounds good.
Over the years, you've been involved with some pretty cool projects, and I remember, sitting in on some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are forensics related, as you had mentioned, helping support compliance issues, both in industrial but also for the consultant sectors. Are there a couple that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's seems like there's something new every week, but recently we've decided to set up a method for testing and quantifying the SARS-CoV-2 SARS-CoV-2 virus and wastewater samples. It's just in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We obviously have a lot of customers that work in the municipal sector. There's a lot of interest for being able to track the prevalence of the disease within communities. And so wastewater-based epidemiology it's not really a new tool, but it's something that again, it's one of those interesting and fun topics, especially for somebody that's just deep into the science. It's very interesting. So that's been a project we've been working on for probably the past 5-6 months, just setting up the method. There's a lot of troubleshooting involved in it. Molecular science isn't, in many respects, it's not as easy as it's just your typical chemical testing. So it required a lot of hand holding, but there's also a lot of communication in the industry, and there's a lot of relationships that have been built with this, with academia, with regulators, with other labs, with consultants. So that's definitely been an interesting project that we've pretty much gotten to an end point from the upfront work, so to speak. So now it's time to apply it frequently to the real world.
Yeah, obviously something needed. Yeah, and fantastic that we've been able to provide that offering to the market. Tell me a little bit about the work you've done on road salt forensics as well.
Yeah, so I guess whenever we talk about forensics, one of the first things everybody kind of thinks about is petroleum-related forensics. Just as there's so much of that's been used in society, and it's probably one of the most common environmental contaminants from a site assessment remediation type scenario. It's petroleum, it's gasoline, it's diesel, it's crude, it could be anything. But the reality is that forensics applies to environmental forensics, and it's the reason why we call it environmental forensics, is it applies to any sort of contaminant. And what it means is, from a lab's perspective, we typically get asked, measure how much of this it is or is there, and let me know the result. Forensics is when you start to ask questions beyond that. Why is it here? Where is it coming from? Who's to blame? How long has it been there? So it naturally starts to apply to not just organic-based contaminants like petroleum, but it could be inorganic. And road salt is something that we use a lot of in Ontario. And the challenge with this is you sometimes have naturally occurring high content of salt in either soil or groundwater across different regions or areas of the province, and it could be the country too. So the question is, how do you differentiate? How do you know when it's something that's naturally occurring that Mother Nature put there, or is it something that we've put there intentionally? And so we've done some work at figuring out, what are the proportions of constituents in road salt, and what are the different products that are used, and is there a pattern? Is there a fingerprint that you can use from a chemical analysis perspective where you could differentiate between the two? And we've come up with sort of a staged approach of tests that apply, of methods of looking at the data and interpreting it. And we've successfully applied it to a few projects where we've been able to differentiate what's de-icing related activities versus it's natural, it's there.
Mm-hmm. What's the result for the end customer by us doing that work?
They get a clear answer of whether they have a problem or not. And if they have a problem, how do they fix it? If it's not genuine environmental impact, then they can explain that with supporting evidence and sound science to the regulators. And we've been involved with customers that have been faced with these kinds of problems, as well as liaising with regulators to say, this is our approach, because this isn't something that you'd find necessarily as a reference and say, the regulation says to do this. This is kind of thinking outside the box. Yeah. And so it's important that you liaise between the two and say, this is the rationale for it, and this is how the data helps you.
Right. Because it's really what you're trying to do is prove the background.
Right.
The contamination is naturally occurring, or the concentrations are naturally occurring as opposed to being added by us. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. Highly valuable. And we've had some success, obviously, in assisting in proving that, which in the end is beneficial to the end customer in that remedial actions don't necessarily have to be taken at that point in time because it was background anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, Virgil, are you ready to have some fun?
Do it.
All right, we're going to transition our way into a rapid fire question section. Here we go. So tell me, what's your favorite hobby?
Fishing.
What's the one food you can't live without?
Meat.
I thought you were going to say wine. No, it's not. That's what I thought you were going. Mac or PC?
PC, for sure.
Okay. When I binge watch,
Netflix. Right now, it's Kim's Convenience.
Cool. Oh, another one I should watch. I hear it's great. What song gets stuck in your head and you just can't get it out?
Don't Worry, Be Happy by Bobby McFerrin.
That's because you have kids.
Yep, helps.
Would you air guitar or lip sync?
Lip sync.
Okay. If you could meet one famous person, who would that famous person be?
It'd have to be a comedian, and it's a toss-up between the late Robin Williams or Russell Peters.
Wow. Okay, cool. Damon Wayans. I would love to run into Damon Wayans. So sorry, I jumped in on that one. And if you weren't a chemist, you'd be?
Firefighter, probably. There's lots of chemistry and physics involved there.
That's cool. I like that. And the last thing I have on the list is, what's the one thing that's left on the honey-do list?
For today, take care of the dishes.
That's all good. I hear you. Virgil, thanks a lot. That was a great interview. I really appreciate getting to know you better and getting behind the science.
Very happy to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Listen, you take care. Have a great weekend, okay?
You too. Take care.